You've always been my backup plan, not my first choice. You know that, right? That's what my girlfriend told me to my face. I walked out calmly. 4 years later, I've got a wife, a kid, a house, and she's alone, texting me about how she threw it all away. Hey Reddit, figured I'd finally write this out. It's a long one, but worth it. Let's just say I learned the hard way what happens when someone thinks they can upgrade their life at my expense. I kept my cool, played it smart, and watched the whole thing flip upside down for them. Buckle up. This one still feels unreal when I think about it. It starts a few years back. Back then, I, David, 36 male, was working as a warehouse supervisor. Not a glamorous job, but I was good at it, and I knew where it could take me. I had crews under me, handled schedules, made sure shipments were where they were supposed to be, and when problems came up, people looked at me to fix them. That's the part I liked, being the guy who solved the problems nobody else wanted to touch. At night, I studied for my logistics certification. My plan was simple: move up into management, then eventually into consulting. I didn't care about showing off or chasing trends. I cared about building something stable that I could rely on. I was living with my girlfriend at the time, Ava, 33 female. She was a marketing coordinator who jumped between startups like it was a sport. Every few months it was a new company, a new big idea, and new coworkers she swore were going to change the world. I didn't really get her world, but I didn't need to. I let her do her thing and I did mine. We rented this duplex. From the outside it looked plain. Cheap siding, patchy lawn, a driveway just wide enough for my truck. Inside, though, we made it look good. Most of our furniture came from estate sales. That was our weekend hobby. Every Saturday morning we'd hit a couple spots. I'd look for furniture with solid bones, oak tables, old armchairs, desks that just needed work. I'd load them in the truck, get them home, and spend the weekend in the garage sanding and fixing. Ava would pick out fabrics and colors. We had our roles and it worked. The garage was basically my shop. It always smelled like stain, glue, and sawdust. Tools lined up on a pegboard I put together, extension cords hanging from hooks, old radio in the corner. I'd be working on a piece, sweat running down my back, while Ava sat nearby flipping through swatches or Pinterest boards. By the end of the day, we'd have something that looked brand new. On our 5th anniversary, I gave her a promise ring. We'd found it at an estate sale. Simple, vintage, not flashy. We had it resized and she wore it every day. That was supposed to be the start of moving toward marriage, just waiting until we were both more established. I pulled my weight and then some. When her car acted up, I drove her to her networking events. While she was inside shaking hands, I sat in a coffee shop with my books open, running through formulas and case studies. When she needed slides cleaned up for a presentation, I did it. When she wanted to take an online course that wasn't cheap, I picked up extra weekend shifts to cover it. She never had to worry about backing herself up because I was always there. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't being walked on. I didn't do it because I was desperate for her approval. I did it because I figured that's what a strong relationship looks like. She handled the networking, the flashy creative ideas, and I handled the foundation. In my head, that balance made sense. We talked about marriage here and there. Nothing concrete, but the plan was clear. Get more stable first, then buy a house with space for both of us. I wanted a garage big enough to set up a full workshop with proper benches and storage. She wanted a home office. The duplex wasn't supposed to be permanent, just a step on the way. But after a while, it started to feel like home. I didn't sit around doubting things. I was too busy grinding. My certification wasn't easy, but I treated it like another job. Flashcards, notes, practice tests. Ava would vent about her jobs, say she kept missing opportunities. I'd tell her she'd make it big one day. And I meant it. I wasn't sugarcoating it. I actually believed she had talent. At that point, nothing looked shaky from my end. So in my head, everything was fine. I had a stable job, a certain progress, a place that actually felt like ours, and a girlfriend I thought was on the same page. No alarms, no second guessing, just business as usual. However, Ava's world started changing faster than mine. She was getting invited to more mixers, meetups, industry nights in San Francisco and Palo Alto. Half the time I didn't even know what half these events were for. Tech founders, angel investors, brand launches. To her, it was all opportunity. To me, it just sounded like a room full of people trying to impress each other. But I didn't knock it. She started talking more about the guys she met at these events. Not directly comparing, but slipping it into conversation. Brian just closed Series B funding. He's only 27. Or, Lee got his girlfriend a Bahamas trip for her birthday. I'd be balancing the checkbook while she dropped those lines. I'd nod, then bring up maybe planning a Yosemite camping trip. She'd make a face like those two things weren't even close. I didn't argue. In my mind, I was still doing fine. My cert was moving forward, my job was steady, and I knew my lane. Then came Jet. She met him at one of those Palo Alto mixers. From what I got out of her, he was an interior designer who also flipped high-end properties. He drove a white Tesla, lived in Marin, and his Instagram looked like a catalog. Perfect coffee setups, modern houses staged to the last detail. Ava came back from that event lit up in a way I hadn't seen since the early days of us working on furniture together. Except this time, the spark wasn't about me. She started dropping his name into conversations. Jet really understands design on another level, she said one night, standing in our living room, gesturing at the furniture we restored like it was amateur hour. He told me there's more room for success if I don't stick strictly to thrift shop goods. I let it slide. People talk big at networking events. I figured she'd get over it. But the weekends started changing. Where we used to hit estate sales together, now she was collaborating with Jet. Saturday strategy meetings, Sunday property visits. She'd leave early, come back late, hair smelling like expensive cologne I didn't own. I never got invited to these site visits. Apparently, there was no space for me in that part of her life. Around that same time, the promise ring disappeared. I noticed one night when we were eating takeout at the dining table we fixed up together. I asked where it went. She said it got in the way when she handled fabric swatches. Rings weren't practical for design work. That was the end of it. No conversation about what it meant. Just gone. Her look changed too. Ava used to wear jeans, t-shirts, vintage band hoodies when we worked on furniture. Suddenly, it was flowing neutral outfits that looked like they belonged in Jet's Instagram feed. She said it was about presenting yourself professionally. I didn't press. Clothes didn't matter to me, but it was obvious she was trying to match his style. The language shifted too. I'd bring up my cert, how I was learning new supply chain software, how it could open management roles. She'd roll her eyes and say, "You think like a handyman, not like someone who actually builds something new and creative?" I wasn't offended. I knew my strengths. I didn't need to create flashy things to feel valuable. But it was the first time she started framing what I did as less. By fall, our weekends together were basically gone. I'd work overtime or study while she was in Sausalito with Jet. She came home late Sundays, glowing about whatever they were working on. Jet says I should think bigger. Jet thinks I've been limiting myself in marketing. Every sentence had his name in it. I'd nod, keep flipping through my notes, but I wasn't blind. I saw where it was heading. I didn't fight it. I'm not the guy who begs for attention. I kept doing my thing. Wake up, work, study, train, sleep. I figured either she'd get her head back on straight or she wouldn't. My job was to stay solid, not chase someone trying to impress strangers. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't notice the distance. You can only ignore so many late nights, new clothes, and disappearing rings before you put it together. She was chasing something else, and I wasn't part of it. I still thought we'd stabilize eventually. I thought the cert, the promotion, the house plan, that would ground us again. At that point, though, it was obvious she was already looking past me. Anyways, one night I pulled a double shift at the warehouse. Long day, nothing unusual. I drove home expecting to see Ava on the couch with her laptop, or maybe messing around with another one of her Pinterest projects. Instead, I opened the door and froze. Our bedroom looked like a store display. 2 brand new leather suitcases sat open on the bed. Inside were stacks of expensive clothes I'd never seen before. I stood in the doorway, boots still on, taking it in. "Going somewhere?" I asked, calm, like I already knew the answer. She didn't even flinch. Didn't look guilty. She just kept folding another blouse with both hands. Careful, like she was packing for a photo shoot. "Actually, I'm moving in with Jet." She said it plain, like she was telling me we were out of milk. I repeated it back because I wanted to hear it out loud. "Moving in with Jet." "Yes," she said. "We've been together for months, so obviously the next step is moving in with him. He's giving me a full partnership in his business, something you could never do. His place actually has room for me to work on real projects, not just squeeze junk into corners." Her tone was casual, cold. No apology, no hesitation. Like I was a landlord she was notifying before breaking a lease. "Months?" I asked, though it wasn't really a question. The timeline rearranged itself in my head. Every collab, every weekend trip, every late-night call, all of it fit. She finally looked at me. Her face didn't show guilt. It showed pity. "David, you've always been my backup plan, not my first choice. You know that, right?" It was blunt, rude, and condescending all in one, like she was teaching me a lesson I should have known. "Explain that," I said, still calm. She sat on the edge of the bed, surrounded by her new wardrobe, and crossed her arms. "You were basically training wheels, David. Safe, boring, predictable. I stayed until I knew what I really wanted, and Jet can offer me things you can't even touch. Training wheel, I repeated. Yes, don't act shocked. You're a good guy, but let's be honest. You fix things. You don't create. You don't have ambition like Jet does. With him, I get financial security, real creative chances, an actual lifestyle. With you, it's camping trips and old furniture. She smirked, actually smirked, like that was beneath her. The way she dismissed 6 years of shared weekends, plans, and work like it was nothing, it didn't even make me angry. It just made things very clear. So 6 years was just you killing time? I asked. She laughed lightly, like I'd said something naive. David, those weren't real plans. They were comfortable fantasies. You talk about bigger garages and certifications. That's not the same as building something big. That's small thinking. Jet is on another level. He actually matches my ambition. He gets me. You never did. The whole picture clicked into place. This wasn't sudden. She'd been planning her exit for months. New wardrobe, new lifestyle, new man. I was just the placeholder until the better offer came through. You're reliable, sure, but you're not what I actually want. I'm not going to hold back just to keep you happy. Right, I said, steady. So that's it. 6 years, and I was just practice. Don't be dramatic, she snapped, rolling her eyes. We've been growing apart. You had to see that. I've outgrown this. All of this. She waved her hand at the duplex like it was a cheap motel. And you have to admit, what Jet and I have is more exciting than anything you and I built. You mean while you were sneaking around behind my back? I asked. Her face hardened. Don't twist it. It's not sneaking around. It's moving on. You're too stuck in your little warehouse world to see what's possible. I need someone who can elevate me. You were a good step, but you're not a final destination. The arrogance in her voice was unreal. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't sorry. She was proud of herself for upgrading. I looked at her one more time and realized I didn't know this person. Not really. She wasn't the girl who sat on a stool in my garage handing me sandpaper. She was a stranger who had already replaced me in her head months ago. Okay, I said, and turned to leave. Her head jerked up, surprised I wasn't begging. That's it? You're just walking away? Yeah, I said. You already made your choice. I don't beg for leftovers. She tried again, sharper this time. David, don't be immature. We can have an adult conversation about this. You don't have to storm out. I opened the door, grabbed my keys. No need for a conversation. You're packed. You're leaving. That's it. Unbelievable, she muttered behind me. You act like I blindsided you. I gave you 6 years. Be grateful for that. Most guys would kill to have someone like me, even temporarily. That one made me laugh. Then I'll let Jet enjoy the honor. I didn't look back. I walked straight out, got in my truck, and drove east to my brother Andrew's place in Stockton. I didn't slam doors, didn't raise my voice. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a scene. Andrew opened the door, saw my face, and didn't ask questions. He grabbed a couple sodas, handed me one, and we went out back to look at his half-built deck. That weekend, I helped him rebuild it. Power tools, boards, screws. No big conversations, just work. That's how I reset, by producing something useful instead of wasting breath. By Monday, I knew what I had to do. I drove back to the duplex while Ava was at work. The place already felt different, like it didn't belong to me anymore. I didn't waste time. I packed only what mattered. Clothes, my books, my certification materials, and the toolbox my dad gave me when I first moved out years back. Everything else stayed. Furniture, dishes, decorations. None of it mattered anymore. Before I left, I set my house key on the counter with a small note. Good luck with everything. No begging, no emotion, just closure. That afternoon, I signed a lease on a small apartment near the warehouse. Nothing special. Folding table, air mattress, my laptop. That was all I needed. I blocked Ava on everything. Phone, email, socials. Deleted every trace of her. She made her decision. I wasn't sticking around as her backup plan. 6 years, and she thought I was just practice. Fine. Let her test her real thing. I wasn't wasting another second. So after I moved out, life got quieter and more focused. No drama, no distractions, just work and my certification. I built my days into a routine. The logistics certification wasn't easy. A lot of math, inventory modeling, supply chain case studies, but I treated it like a second job. Ava used to drain my energy with constant complaints. Now I had total quiet. That quiet let me push harder than I thought I could. 6 months later, I passed. Top scores on every section. I'd already been shadowing our company's internal consulting team and fixing 2 client sites on my own time. so everyone knew I was doing the work. HR just needed the cert to rubber stamp it. A week later, my manager called me in and made it official. Regional logistics consultant on our company's internal consulting team. The same role he'd been holding for me pending the certificate. It came with a serious pay raise and a different level of respect. Before, I was the guy who fixed immediate problems. Now I was the one mapping systems, finding inefficiencies, redesigning distribution networks. People asked for my input instead of just handing me problems to solve. That was the upgrade I'd been grinding toward. With the promotion and extra money, I didn't waste time. I started house hunting. I'd been stacking savings for years and already had a mortgage pre-approval sitting in my inbox. The raise just bumped the limit, so moving fast wasn't luck. It was paperwork. I wanted space. I found a small house in a quiet neighborhood with a detached garage. The second I saw the garage, I knew it was mine. I put in an offer that afternoon, and the pre-approval made it a clean, quick close. The garage was big enough to build a proper workshop, concrete floors, good wiring for power tools. I signed the papers and moved in within a month. Setting up the garage was the best part. I installed pegboards, mounted hooks, labeled drawers, bought new shelving. I built myself a rolling workbench, organized my tools by category, and finally had room to spread out projects without bumping into everything. No one was criticizing the setup, no one rolling their eyes. Just me, my tools, and the work. Even with the new job and house, I didn't let myself get isolated. My brother Andrew suggested I get involved somewhere outside work. I wasn't going to join some networking group, but volunteering at the local animal shelter made sense. That's where I met Abby. She was a veterinary technician who volunteered her skills on weekends. She wasn't flashy. She wore simple clothes, kept her hair in a ponytail, no fake attitude. She actually worked, bathing nervous rescues, treating cuts, calming dogs that didn't trust anyone. She didn't just pose for pictures, she got her hands dirty. Over the next few months, we ended up paired on a lot of shifts. Things developed slow, but steady. Dinner at my place turned into weekends together. She saw the garage workshop and thought it was impressive instead of blue collar. She actually asked me to explain how I'd reorganized a client's distribution network and listened like it mattered. No eye rolls, no pretending she was above it. After a year and a half, Abby moved in. It wasn't forced, it wasn't dramatic. She brought her own furniture, I had mine, and it blended without fights. She didn't try to redesign the house or tell me my taste was outdated. She respected what I had built. That was new for me. The house finally felt like a home that wasn't temporary. I had the job I wanted, the workshop I always pictured, and someone beside me who wasn't looking past me for the next upgrade. Everything lined up because I made it line up myself, not because I was waiting on anyone else's permission. So, 2 years into my relationship with Abby, I decided it was time to lock things down. I'd been planning it for a while. I bought a ring, nothing over the top, just clean and solid, and kept it hidden in my desk drawer until I knew the right time. That summer, we planned a trip to Lake Tahoe. I didn't waste time. Pulled the ring from my jacket, asked her to marry me. Simple as that. She said yes, straight away. No hesitation, no overthinking. That's exactly how I like things. We didn't drag it out with a long engagement or some massive production. Within 3 months, we had the wedding in my backyard. Andrew was my best man. Her sister stood for her. And the whole thing was wrapped up by sundown. We spent less than some people blow on flowers. And it was 10 times more real than the shows people put on to impress strangers. Work kept steady. As a regional logistics consultant, I spent more time at client sites than in the warehouse. I'd map out their distribution networks, point out where they were bleeding money, and design systems to fix it. It wasn't glamorous, but the paychecks cleared, and I had companies depending on me for solutions. That's the kind of respect I wanted. People calling me because they trusted I'd get it right. About 8 months after the wedding, Abby told me she was pregnant. Straightforward announcement. We went to the doctor, got the first ultrasound, and they handed us a grainy black and white print. We pinned it to the fridge with a dog bone magnet one of the shelter volunteers had given us. That same night, I cleared space in the garage and started sketching plans for a crib. I wasn't going to buy one. I wanted something sturdy that would last. I bought lumber, measured everything twice, cut pieces, sanded edges. Every evening after work, I'd put in an hour or two. Base, rails, brackets, sanding, more sanding, then dry fits. By the time I started staining, I could already see it taking shape. Abby would check in and nod her approval. No complaints about sawdust in the garage. She liked that I was building it myself. That same month, Andrew called me out of nowhere. I knew the tone from his first words. It was the voice he used when he had a piece of gossip he couldn't wait to drop. "You're not going to believe what I just heard about Ava," he said. I leaned back in my chair. Go ahead. He'd texted me a link to an early business journal piece and a public filing. Turns out Jet wasn't what Ava thought he was. All that property flipping and design business talk was mostly smoke. What he was really running was a front for fraud. He had Ava signing paperwork for shell companies, acting like they were real partnerships. With her marketing background, she made the projects look credible. He used her contacts to approach startups and angle for investment money. Then the funds were routed to accounts offshore. The piece said one startup finally caught on when their seed funding disappeared faster than it should have. They brought in auditors, who brought in investigators. Once the FBI got involved, Jet vanished. Packed up, disappeared, no forwarding address. Ava was left holding contracts with her name on them. Jet didn't stay gone. 2 weeks later, the U.S. Marshals grabbed him outside Reno, and once his lawyer showed up, he started cooperating to save his own skin. The numbers weren't small. 500,000 at least. Wire fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, serious federal charges. And since her signature was on the paperwork, she looked complicit whether she knew the full picture or not. By then, Ava had already lost her job. No company wants someone under investigation on their payroll. She burned through her savings on legal fees, trying to stay afloat. But lawyers aren't cheap, and she didn't have Jet to back her anymore. She was sinking fast. Between the article and the filing, the breakdown was all there. Which companies were involved, how the auditors traced the money, and which agencies were circling. I let him finish, then went back to sanding the crib rails I'd been working on. My only comment was, figures. Because really, it fit. She wanted an upgrade, and she got one. Just not the kind she was expecting. Meanwhile, life on my side stayed steady. Doctor appointments for Abby, setting up the nursery, rearranging the spare room into baby prep instead of an office. I worked my clients during the week, fixed up the crib at night, volunteered at the shelter on Saturdays. No chaos, no breakdowns, no scams, just progress. That's the difference. She'd gambled on a man who sold a fantasy. I built my life on real actions, piece by piece. Not long after Andrew told me about Ava's mess with Jet, the calls started. Unknown numbers at random hours. Texts that opened casual, like we hadn't gone 3 years without speaking. The first one said, "Hey, how have you been? Just checking in." I blocked it. The next came from a Nevada area code. "I've been thinking a lot about the past. Would love to reconnect." Blocked again. She kept trying. Some were fake social media accounts. One claimed to be a veterinary supply company and sent Abby a friend request on Instagram. The account had 0 posts, followed only me and Abby. We laughed about it, but I also told Abby to block it right away. Ava wasn't subtle, and she wasn't smart about covering her tracks. As weeks went by, her tone changed. Messages went from friendly to desperate. "I know you hate me, but I don't deserve what's happening." Another one at 2 a.m. "You always believed in me, David. You know I'd never commit fraud. I was used. I need someone like you in my corner right now." She even put a number on it, $20,000 for legal fees. The way she worded it, she acted like it was nothing, like I should just hand it over because of our history. I never replied. Every number that showed up, I blocked. Every fake account, deleted. I wasn't about to give her an inch. Abby knew the full story now, and she didn't even flinch when I explained the past. That's what Ava didn't understand. She thought she could wedge herself back into my life with some half-baked leverage, but there was nothing left to wedge. By the time the baby shower rolled around, Ava's attempts were just background noise. Abby and I had planned a simple backyard setup. We hung string lights between the oak trees, borrowed folding chairs from Andrew, set up long tables with disposable tablecloths, and ordered trays of food. Andrew handled the playlist. Half decent, half questionable, but he was in charge, so I let it ride. The grill was set up near the garage, and I kept things moving. Burgers, chicken, hot dogs. Guests filtered in. People dropped off gifts. Abby's sister handled the unwrapping station. It was calm, the kind of event where you know everyone there actually wants to be there. Around 3 in the afternoon, the doorbell rang. I thought it was a late guest, or maybe a delivery. I walked around to the front of the house. When I opened the door, Ava was standing there. She looked nothing like the woman I remembered. Thin, tired, hair flat and unstyled, makeup smudged. She was wearing a sweater and jeans that looked like they'd been pulled from a donation bin. Her eyes darted past me into the house, like she expected to see Jet's version of a lifestyle instead of the family backyard we had going. "Hi, David," she said, voice soft like she thought acting vulnerable would help. "I know this is unexpected, but I need to talk to you." "How did you get this address?" I asked. That was my first concern. "I hired a private investigator," she answered, like it was completely normal to admit that. Please, I'm in serious trouble, and I don't have anyone else to turn to. Jet destroyed my life. I need help from someone who actually knows who I really am. The delusion was obvious. She thought the guy she called her safety net was going to swoop in now that she had nothing left. What do you want? I asked flatly, blocking the doorway. I need money for legal fees, she said immediately, dropping any pretense of small talk. 20,000. I know it sounds like a lot, but given everything between us, I thought maybe you could help me get through this. After all, you supported me before. You believed in me before. Surely that means something. You came to my house during my wife's baby shower to ask me for money? I said. Her face twitched, like she didn't expect me to say it that bluntly. David, I realize I made mistakes. I chose wrong. I was confused back then. But what we had was real. I know that now. I could be part of your life again. Maybe even help with the baby. Don't shut me out. By then, Abby had walked up behind me, hand resting on her stomach. She looked at Ava like she was just some stranger at the door. Hi, Abby said politely. I'm Abby. Are you looking for someone? I put my arm around Abby's shoulders. This is my wife, I said. Ava, my ex from years ago. Ava's eyes flicked to Abby's belly and then back to me. She's beautiful, she muttered, voice going flat. Then sharper. How far along are you? 7 months, Abby answered, steady as ever. We're having a girl. Congratulations, Ava said, but her tone didn't match the word. She turned back to me quickly. David, could we talk privately? There are things your wife probably doesn't know, things about our relationship she should hear. That was the delusion fully on display. She thought she had some hidden card to play. I didn't blink. My wife knows everything important, including the fact that you called me your safety net and said I wasn't the real thing. Abby didn't even flinch. She just squeezed my hand. Ava's face flushed. Her bluff called in one line. That's not fair, she snapped. I was young, confused, scared. I made mistakes, but I never stopped caring about you. We can fix this. You don't have to let me drown. Her desperation was rising, and her voice was getting louder. Guests in the backyard had definitely noticed the change in tone. You need to leave, I said calmly. This is my home, my family. You're not welcome here. I'm not leaving until you agree to help me, she shot back, eyes wide, voice cracking. You owe me that much after everything we had. You can't just abandon me. She tried to push past me into the house. I stepped forward, blocking the door with my body. Last warning, Ava. Leave now. She shook her head, muttering something about how I'd regret it. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed 911. I'm calling the police to report trespassing, I said. I latched the door and stayed on the porch. She crossed her arms and said she wasn't leaving. Her face went blank, like it hadn't crossed her mind I'd actually call her bluff. Within 10 minutes, 2 officers pulled up. They separated us, took our IDs, and asked what happened. I told them she wasn't invited and had refused to leave. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no, just get her off my property. They issued a formal trespass warning and had me sign it. She kept arguing after 2 chances to leave, so they walked her to the cruiser while I finished the paperwork. They drove her off the property and released her at the end of the block. No arrest, no charges, just the paper trail I wanted. I walked back through the house into the yard. Abby was still with her sister, guests pretending nothing happened. Andrew gave me a look that said he'd seen everything. I nodded back. That was the end of it. After the baby shower incident, Ava was officially finished in my life. The cops had walked her off the curb, and I figured that would be the last time I saw her. But Ava wasn't wired to quit that easy. For the next week, new numbers popped up again. One was some prepaid phone, another, a Google Voice account. The messages weren't even consistent. 1 minute she was saying she loved me and always had. The next, she was threatening that she'd make sure people knew the truth if I didn't help her. The truth being what? That she cheated, called me practice, and then got burned by Jet? She had nothing. Abby and I were locked in. We ignored everything. When Ava called our regional office line pretending to be a client of my company, I had the company receptionist flag her and block every attempt. She sent a handwritten letter too. Messy handwriting with 3 pages of rambling. I read the first sentence. Something about fate and second chances, and dropped it straight in the shredder. The part that sealed it came 2 months later. Andrew sent me a link to a local news article. Fraud charges, felony theft, conspiracy. Jet's name and Ava's name side by side. By the time that article hit, he was already talking to agents and lining up a cooperation deal. They'd tried to skim client money into a fake consulting firm. Jet had set it up. Ava signed her name as guarantor. It was sloppy and arrogant, and now they were both looking at prison time. That was the last nail. She went from standing on my porch asking for 20 grand to facing 10 years behind bars. The article even quoted an investigator who said, "These suspects operated with overconfidence and no real cover." That line alone told me Ava hadn't changed at all. Still entitled, still convinced she was untouchable. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel pity either. It was just final. The door was closed. She'd played every card wrong and finally ran out of hands to bluff with. Meanwhile, Abby and I stayed focused on our own life. We finished the nursery, crib against the far wall, soft blue paint, stuffed animals from family stacked in the corner. The shower gifts filled the closet. I kept busy with work, steady projects, nothing flashy. Abby's pregnancy moved along smooth. Doctor's appointments all clear. When our daughter was born, I remember standing in that hospital room holding her, Abby resting beside me, and thinking how glad I was that Ava was gone. There was no way I'd ever let someone like her circle around this family. About 9 months later, Jet's plea deal hit the docket, and his cooperation became public record. After that, Ava was left holding most of the blame. A few months later, in court, she tried the same victim line, said she'd been manipulated. Nobody bought it. The judge cut her off mid-sentence and said her choices spoke for themselves. That was fitting. She spent years thinking she was above consequences, using people until they ran dry. With Jet, she thought she'd won the jackpot. With me, she thought she had a safety net waiting forever. In reality, all she had was her own bad decisions stacked up until the whole thing collapsed. I never answered another text. I never acknowledged her letters. To me, Ava was just someone I used to know. A chapter that closed the day I met Abby. Life moved forward, clean and steady. And if Ava ever thought she'd still find a way back in, well, prison walls don't leave much room for daydreaming.